Alright, I think we're live. Welcome to the Fight Night Taira vs. Park breakdown. Someone please tell me if you can hear me as usual. By the way, if the stream just randomly dies at some point, it's probably because my power went out. I think we'll be okay, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think the start of all my streams is going to be super cringe until I get used to doing it. I'll take that as you can hear me, though. Alright, cool. Okay, so we'll start with the typical, 10 to 15 minutes of questions, and then after that, I do have a new format I'm going to try to use. We're going to go between, my old way of doing it, which is just staying on the events and stats page, and then also more of a graphical breakdown so you guys can see my thought process with the fights. So the questions in the beginning I'll start with. So first question was, can Taira beat Pantoja, and what's his ceiling? So Taira is hypothetically definitely capable of beating Pantoja. His skill set is the perfect counter to Pantoja's hypothetically. It's just more of a question of, will he be ready before Pantoja retires? And that I am not certain about, because Pantoja realistically probably only has 2 more fights at the weight class max. And Taira, of course, if he wins this, probably will fight for a title soon, because there aren't exactly the most challengers in the weight class. So whether he's going to beat Pantoja now or not is really going to depend on how much he's evolved since the Royval fight. So we will see this weekend, in my opinion. Second question, fight predictions and why Peter Yan versus Umar, Shevchenko versus Zhang, and Taira versus Pulyaev. Yan should be able to break Umar in the later rounds. Umar has always had a problem with gassing out. I'm not sure why a lot of people tried to deny it for a while. So as long as it's a 5-round fight, then Yan probably takes over in rounds 3, 4, 5. Shevchenko versus Zhang is actually hard. I'm going to lean towards Zhang because Shevchenko seems to have issues when her opponents start mixing things up. If they're only striking or only grappling, she'll figure it out. But we even saw with, what's her name, in her last fight, that she was doing great as long as it was just striking. But as soon as there was grappling mixed into it, even though her opponent wasn't a grappler, she started having a lot more issues. Taira versus Pulyaev should be pretty easy for Taira. Taira could definitely just neutralize the grappling at a minimum, and Taira's a much better striker. Who deserves the lightweight title shot? Personally, Arman. I agree that, technically speaking, Arman deserves it. However, seeing that he turned down Gamrot really would make me not want to see him get a title shot. Because if you are turning down someone who beat you in a close decision, you can argue robbery or not, doesn't really matter, and you don't want to avenge that loss when you think it's an easy fight, then I don't know if you deserve to fight for the title, despite even the whole, him pulling out last second thing. So, honestly, I would actually probably rather see Paddy get it right now, which might seem strange because, yeah, he's going to get absolutely starched. But Gaethje definitely doesn't deserve it. Arman probably doesn't deserve it because of turning down Gamrot and pulling out last second and not having a fight in between. So Paddy's the only one you can argue is okay, he's technically on a win streak, I guess. Your video made me watch every single John Silva fight in the UFC. Glad to hear it, I think. Love your YouTube content. IMO, your latest video was the best one. Thanks. How many Shamil Gazivs entering the cage at one time would it take to beat Aspinall? Probably just 2, as long as he was going to fight it logically. As long as he came in with a wrestling having game plan with 2 of them, it should be enough. How do you feel about the RDR result, and where does he go from here? It was a very close fight. I don't think, either person getting it would have been a robbery, in all honesty. I think the problem is RDR stand-up just has not, his striking defense has never improved. It's always so, he will get hit by any straight shot you throw at him. So, unless he fixes that, he's just not going to be able to beat anyone he fights next. He probably fights Adesanya next, and I definitely will have to pick Adesanya there, realistically. How would John Silva versus Holloway have gone? I think that John Silva could also crack Holloway's chin over, a 5-round fight. I don't think it would be as dramatic as like the Ilya one, where it's like, oh, every shot he's landing is going to rock him. No, I think it would have been more of accumulation, like maybe some big elbows land, and then like late 4th rounds, Holloway's chin gives out. Who do you think wins Aaron Pico versus Murphy? I have to lean Murphy. Pico could get a crazy knockout because there are times at which Murphy's like stand-up defense just disappears for a few seconds. He's not really good when his opponent gets on the inside with hooks, so it wouldn't shock me for Aaron Pico to get a flatline knockout. At the same time, though, Pico's stand-up is just not sophisticated enough to deal with Murphy, most likely. Arman and Gamrot train ATT. Yeah, they do, but they don't train together, from what I know, and they had no problem fighting in the past. So it really felt like Arman was ducking. Andrew Tackett looked really good. I didn't get to watch that. I'll probably watch it later. Off topic, but what made you pick Fernandez over Guram? Really good pick, IMO. I missed Guram. So Guram was just, in all honesty, never as good as people wanted to believe he was. He had a very good matchup against Gamrot in his debut, which made him think he was some like absolute killer, but the reality is his striking defense was always lacking, especially whenever things were chaotic. He also always had problems with the calf kicks. I hadn't seen him defend many calf kicks, so I knew that Fernandez was going to be able to just blast them on the outside, and was probably going to be the faster and more technical fighter in the matchup. Patty beat Chandler and deserves a shot to UFCT. Sure, I agree that Patty is not very deserving, but who is more deserving? Like Arman, who's ducking Gamrot and pulled out literally last second. Like, if you want to argue Arman, I get it. I just don't like rewarding people for ducking. Do Arman versus Patty for title shot? Yeah, that's fine, but then Ilya will have to sit out for a while. Not all at time, 1 Shamil at a time. Oh, maybe like 6 or 7. Can you break down DDP versus Chimaev? Yeah, so it's going to be a very Chimaev fight, where if he wants to win it, he's going to have to get it done very early. The biggest problem DDP is going to have, in my opinion, is that Chimaev's shots can be a little bit difficult to counter because of how low they are. So normally when you know someone's going to shoot at a specific timing, you can just be like, okay, just put an uppercut, put a flying knee, something like that. DDP probably isn't going to be able to time something like that. So I think the way he's more so going to try to deal with it is hold the center as much as possible early, because if you get backed up to the fence, Chimaev just has too many options there. So I'm assuming DDP is going to start the fight like basically running and trying to control the octagon. If Chimaev can get him down against the fence, if he can lift him up, something like that, yeah, he definitely has a shot at finishing the fight in round 1. But if he doesn't get it done in round 1, Chimaev is probably screwed, because 5-round fight, which Chimaev has not had to deal with before, DDP tends to get better as the fight goes along, because his reads get a little bit more accurate. So, for example, against Strickland, he kept looking for the counter over the jab, and he finally found it in round 4, then broke Strickland's nose, and we saw how the fight went from there. So, I think DDP has a sizable advantage because Chimaev's win condition is so small. It's like, okay, he needs to end that fight within 5 minutes, which is possible, but just probably not happening. Loved your Boudet pick and made some money on it. Glad to hear that. But what does him getting cut mean for the UFC? It really feels like they're just giving up on heavyweight. I think like they would argue that like, oh, we're trying to stack heavyweight with entertaining heavyweights and such. But the reality is like, even heavyweights who in theory should be entertaining, like say like Buchecha, right, end up not really being entertaining. So I think that calling the rankings is just going to be more problematic in the end. I really also don't like that Tuivasa is still in the UFC and people who are like actually fighting and trying are not, but it is what it is. By the way, why did UFC only give John southpaws? I think it just was a coincidence. Dion Edwards and Laurent Mofi have the British blank out. Yeah, it's weird that both of them have it. Good point. Arman versus Pimblett. Arman probably wins. Pimblett has a chance because off his back he is really chaotic, but Arman's not gonna like the way that Arman wrestles doesn't give his opponents many opportunities to throw up submissions. He really just stays high on the hips, keeps his like weight down, and then just lands small ground and pound. I personally believe Ilya is still a technically better boxer than JDM. You can argue it. I would say that JDM has more diversity in his techniques, while Ilya is very dependent on the overhand and left hook. So I give the edge to JDM, but I do believe Ilya's footwork is better, so it's really perspective. Felt some people saying that Chimaev's cardio has improved. I mean, I haven't seen it. I would need to see it to believe it. In all of his fights, I feel like we've seen the same thing. Islam versus JDM breakdown. So the thing that I believe that seems to be an unpopular take is that if Islam is going to win the fight, it really has to be with striking. Because I think like Islam's takedowns in the center kind of suck. He's really not going to get JDM down like that. And I doubt JDM's going to back up to the fence because his whole camp knows that Islam's only real means to getting a takedown is against the fence. So I think that Islam does have to shoot to make sure that JDM fights with his hands down, but after that he has to start really looking for the head kick and stuff like that. Because of the fact that I feel like his win condition is specifically JDM dropping his hands and Islam catching him, I am going to favor JDM because I feel like he has more ways to win it. But I do think it is winnable for either of them. I think Pico should mix in takedowns against Murphy. Yeah, he should just do everything possible to overwhelm Murphy. I just don't personally think it will be enough, but I also wouldn't be shocked if it is. Hamzat slows down significantly, but he doesn't gas as badly as people say. I'm worried about a Hamzat 48-47. I don't think the fight goes the distance. He gasses. He doesn't like death gas in that he can't do anything, but you see the degradation in his takedowns very significantly. So after round 1 against Usman, you could see that his shots just had nothing on them anymore. The only way he was able to get it is if it was perfectly timed, and he only got one of those, I believe. Hamzat is doing his camps in Russia instead of UAE. He has better cardio now. Again, I mean, they can claim that, but fast twitch, like, Hamzat is pure fast twitch. The chances of him actually getting good cardio are just so minuscule to me that I would bet against it. Is John Silva your favorite fighter? To watch, maybe. I wouldn't say I'm like particularly attached to his personality or anything, but I think that he is very fun to watch. JDM chins Islam, very possible. It annoys me people don't realize Ilya beats Islam. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Ilya is a very bad stylistic matchup for Islam, and I'm actually not sure why Islam was such a big favorite in the fight. What do you think the odds are DDP isn't some game planning master and has just gotten slightly lucky, plus being a tank at some wins could throw off? None. I don't think those odds exist, because the reality is he's done it too many times. Like, okay, maybe you get lucky catching, what's his name? Catching, Whitaker with a southpaw jab. Maybe you get lucky with that for some reason. But then you go into the Adesanya fight, and all of a sudden, like, okay, you're countering his jab with high kicks, which is not something even I thought about doing, but it was very effective against Adesanya. And then against Strickland, you're countering the jab. And like those three together, and that's not even counting certain reads he had before that, or even certain reads in the first Strickland fight, even though I do think he lost that fight, but it doesn't really matter at this point. So I don't think that is really a possibility. I really hope Chimaev wins. I don't care if he doesn't defend the belt. I don't personally agree with that. I think we need a champion who's actually going to fight, but everyone can have their own perspective there. Who is more likely to sub the other, JDM after dropping Islam or Islam in general? I would say Islam in general. I don't think JDM's going to chase a sub. Does Asakura beat old Tim Elliott? Very likely. Ilya or Khabib? I'm not sure. It's a very good theoretical matchup. I would want to see Ilya fight a chain wrestler first. Like, if Ilya just absolutely eviscerated Arman or Islam, we'd have our answer, in my opinion, even though Khabib is a better chain wrestler realistically. But until we see that, we're just not going to know. I'm really going to say it's a 50-50 for now. Rufi versus BSD is interesting. I think Rufi probably finds a counter shot, but his takedown defense will be tested. Yeah, I mean, if Rufi... So a lot of people are like, oh, this is like BSD's nightmare and all of that, and I somewhat agree. It's a bad matchup for BSD. He does have a win condition, though, which is that if he can survive round 1 without taking any real damage, he's in a relatively good position, because Rufi is going to slow down, and I assume his takedown defense will get worse as the fight goes along. So even though I am favoring Rufi, I'm not going to say BSD has no chance there. I think you can still have good cardio while being fast switch, just good energy management and conditioning. You can never have good cardio. What you can have is good energy management. I agree with that. But your cardio is never going to be good. If someone can push a pace, which DDP can, and he can do it for 5 rounds, you're never going to look good against that. Ulberg versus Reyes early predictions. I'm going to go Reyes decision. I never had a high opinion of Ulberg. What do you think of Khabib saying Hamza should strike? I understand why he's saying that. I don't think it's a... Well, I don't think it's a great idea to just strike. If it's like, oh, you should strike for 2 minutes and then wrestle, I might understand that take. I don't know how nuanced he was with saying it in the interview and such, so I can't say too much on it. Okay, so we got to the 15-minute mark. So we're going to go to the full fight breakdown, and then we'll go back to questions when we're done with this. First time I'm going to be trying this format, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, let's switch over to this. I'm not going to do the new format with the women's fight because I didn't watch enough tape on them to even really do it. All I'm going to say for Piera Rodriguez versus Ketlin Souza, Rodriguez has decent wrestling. Souza hits hard, doesn't have the best wrestling defense. Rodriguez passed the Sam Hughes test. Rodriguez probably wins. Probably decision. Simple as that. I can't claim I went in-depth into the tape here. Estevan versus Boons. Okay, this is where it's going to get interesting. So, this is an interesting fight because Estevan is like minus 520 or something, which honestly I didn't expect, even though I expected him to be a sizable favorite. So, what we're going to do is work an Excalibur draw. Large. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this basically via flowchart. So Estevan has the striking and the grappling. Oops. I'm going to need to get used to navigating this properly. Select, please. There we go. Select. Okay, let's try this again. I cannot select this for some reason. Okay. Whatever. I'm just going to drop a text box inside of it. And the text is invisible. Lovely. Okay, there we go. Here we go. Okay, on the striking side, how do I do this? Whatever, I'll just click on it for now. Estevan mainly is going to throw teeps on the outside. He is a large majority kicker, teeps, low kicks, etc. On the... With the... I don't need this. This is supposed to be a single. With the grappling, he's probably going to shoot on a single leg. However, if he can't get the single leg, then what he's going to do is go to either a throw on the fence, or... I need to get better at navigating these. I know there's hotkeys to do it. Or he's going to try to take the back standing. So basically, this is his whole game plan. He's just going to use the teeps to set up the single leg. I don't know why this is here. We're going to kill this. So this essentially goes to this. So even if he doesn't go directly to the grappling, all of it goes to that. Then on the ground, he is just going to look for ground and pound. Each of these leads to the same thing. So here... Does this work? No. Whatever. Both of these really just lead to ground and pound. Even though he has a jiu-jitsu tattooed on his chest, I think, he really just does ground and pound on the ground. No real effective submission attempts in the UFC so far. Now, Boons... What the hell happened? Okay. I don't know if it's Boons or Boonez, but he has a massive difference with his defense and his offense. And that difference... That is not what I was trying to do. Okay, let me try to fix that. Here we go. Okay, the difference is that his defense does not exist. He will look good when he's striking. He will look good when he's offensive wrestling. He has no defensive wrestling, and he has no defensive striking. He will just get hit by everything you throw. That is like the issue with Bunez, and that's probably why Estevam is such a massive favorite. However, his offense from any position is actually pretty solid. Like when he's striking and he throws like combinations, it actually looks clean, and it actually hurt Josh Van at a certain point. So he's not lost on the feet by any means. With the grappling, he's going to shoot in on a single leg. The problem with him shooting on in a single leg is that that's all he has. He's going to run the pipe, and if that doesn't work and his opponent's able to defend running the pipe, he's just going to hold you against the fence and do absolutely nothing, because he has no other way of finishing it, whereas Estevam will go to the back take, will go to throws, and so on. So the problem for this fight for Bunez, even though he has a lot of offensive skill, if he can get you into the right combinations, he's probably just going to have absolutely no way of imposing it on Estevam. So Estevam, I could see why he is that minus 520 favorite. The problem with Estevam that makes me kind of question it is that he always gasses in round 3. If a fight goes to round 3, he will lose round 3. At least that's what history says. He goes very hard for takedowns early, and then he always ends up just running away the majority of round 3. His fight against Charles Johnson was just embarrassing in round 3. He had absolutely nothing left. Now, Bunez, we haven't really seen how he looks in round 3. Josh Van did break him down, so we'll say Van broke him with a lot of body shots, just a lot of volume, and Bunez was durable, but didn't really have the ability to get anything going at that point. So the question is, can Estevam finish him in round 1 or 2? Which I think is very possible. I'm going to pick Estevam by round 2 TKO, but if Bunez survives to round 3, it's probably just going to be Bunez searching for a finish all of round 3, and anyone who bet on Estevam praying that he survives. Let's see if there's any questions. What are you using to set that up? This is just Excalibur. Hope you start streaming live reaction soon. Would absolutely tune in. Yeah, I'll definitely look to do that. So, any questions on this breakdown? I think there's a way of scrolling out here. Here we go. So, Estevam is very likely going to get the TKO, is basically the final result, or my final prediction here. Second round TKO. But I don't agree with the minus 520 thing. Estevam is taking this on short notice. He might gas even quicker. Yeah, exactly, which is why I don't agree with minus 520. Do you recommend to avoid this fight on a parlay? Yes, I do, because the value you're getting for minus 520 versus the fear he gasses out is just not worth it, in my opinion. Like, if you want to take other big favorites on the card, there are better ones. Move on to the main card. We'll get to the main card, don't worry. What did I miss? I'm using a new graphic style. So I think that is enough for this fight, that we'll move on to the next one. Bashi versus Giannis, I'm not going to use any fancy graphics. This fight is very simple. Giannis can't defend takedowns for his life. He keeps claiming he's working on takedown defense. The fact that he's talking about it so much shows you that it's just not something that he has. Bashi's going to take him down. The only real question is, does Bashi sub him? Probably, because Bashi's just going to have like 15 minutes to try. So I'm going to say Bashi by second round sub. Could easily be round 1. Very simple fight. There's a reason why Bashi's minus 700. This is, in my opinion, kind of a waste of a fight. Klein versus Pulyaev. Okay, this fight does get interesting again. So, how do I... Okay, delete. Cool. So, something interesting about both of these guys. I'm going to make a smaller one so the text isn't teeny. Both of these guys really like their height. So the way they approach it is slightly different. So Klein will throw a lot of low kicks. A few teeps. And like power jabs, I guess, let's call it. This is all really just to set up the same thing, though, which is he wants you to run into a takedown. His actual striking isn't very, like, destructive or useful or anything. So all of this is he wants you to run in, shoots, takedown. So all of it goes here. Once he shoots the takedown, he's going to try to work to the back. He will get to the single leg, run the pipe. So we'll say from here. That's mainly what he does. Whether he moves forwards or backwards really depends on the matchup, but he's never really going to like overextend and trade it in the pocket, so on. In his last fight, he pulled out the spinning back fist, which is something I hadn't seen from him before, and it did work. He made the mistake of getting into a grappling sequence after, and then of course ultimately lost that fight. But he essentially has the same game plan every time, whether he's on the front or back foot, which is make sure your opponent runs into you so you can get to the leg easily, get to the single leg, run the pipe, get them down. His opponent, again, also really likes height. We'll move this out of the way. But he's a pure striker. So he is going to do that. He's going to use it for more quick jabs, combos on outside, and a lot of teeps. And that's always going to do the entire fight. He's literally just going to fight on the outside, try to pick you apart. Pulyev's game plan is very simple, and like, yeah, there's nothing more to it. So predicting this fight is hard, because they pretty much have the exact same game plan, except Klein wants to shoot the takedown with it, Pulyaev just wants to keep you on the feet and pick you apart. Obviously, Pulyev's striking is a lot more refined because that is what he wants to do. His takedown defense is pretty solid. However, he uses his height for the takedown defense also, which gives one problem here, which is that he defends on the fence. He uses his height as a defense and only really defends on the fence. Now, the reason why that might be a problem here is that Klein is going to try to pull him towards him. So the takedowns that Klein shoots are not going to be against the fence here, which is why, despite Klein being a mild underdog, I am going to lean towards him here, because essentially this is going to be something that Pulyaev has not seen before. Or maybe not seen before, but it's something that's not really in his normal game plan. So I think that Klein is basically just going to play a really slow, boring game on the outside, force Pulyaev to move forwards with the jab a little bit too far, grab the takedown from there, and move on. So I'm going to say Klein wins this by decision. Bit of a slow fight. Vieira versus Gore, we're not going to go to any graphics for this one because it's a bit simpler. So Gore is just, I don't even know, he's not really good at anything. He gets hit a lot, his wrestling is okay, his striking is powerful but lacks any nuance. He basically got murdered in his last fight. I understand why the odds aren't too wide on this one, because Vieira's on the older side, ultimately, and Gore can hit you hard, I guess, if he lands. But Vieira should be able to eventually get the takedown, or even just outstrike Gore on the feet technically, because Gore's striking is a little too wild. Like, he is very susceptible to the basic 1-2 that Vieira is going to throw. Simple as that, nothing really more. So I'm going to say Vieira wins by round 2 submission. Could go to decision as well, would not be surprised. I know Rufi isn't technically proven with his UFC resume, but I think Rufi has good footwork, elusive counter. Karate style that can beat Ilya. What do you think? It's possible. Rufi's definitely a style that could beat Ilya. I just don't know if it would would play out like that in reality realistically. But theoretically, yeah, I understand what you're saying 100%. Renia versus Fletcher, we're also not going to use any graphics for, because they have the same game plan. Both of them are wrestlers. For some reason, Renia didn't shoot last fight. I have no words for that. I don't know what he was thinking. However, this fight should be simple because Fletcher will initiate the wrestling for him. So Renia is just going to reverse it, take him down. The method of the fight ending is anyone's guess realistically, because ultimately, Renia is going to probably look for the ground and pound TKO. Renia also has a tendency to go for the north-south choke at certain points in fights, so we might see that once or twice. Fletcher has solid jiu-jitsu. I don't think he's going to get subbed that easily, so I do think it will be a lot of just mild ground and pound and a lot of control time from Nakamura. I'm going to favor a ground and pound TKO later in the fight. I'm going to say round 3. A lot of people are saying oh, Fletcher's a great underdog. He's gonna whatever, just basically stop Renia from wrestling and outstrike him on the feet. But then when you look at Fletcher's actual resume, 50% takedown defense against Logren, who has nothing compared to Nakamura in the wrestling. This should not be very competitive. Hey, Mr. Mike. Thanks for the compliment, Waltz. Thoughts on Carlos Leal losing? I mean, that's embarrassing. Leal was always a little bit overrated realistically because he had matchups that favored him. Even the short notice against Bakardinov was a matchup that he could win because Renat doesn't really have nuance in the striking. But yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be getting slept by a 40-some-year-old Salikov. That is not good. Learning more from this than I did from all my school years. Good stuff. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. I don't want to spend too much time on the super obvious fights. This is a less obvious fight. Despite Vallejos opening at, say, minus 400 or something, I don't really agree with that here. Because, okay, so I did mention some stuff about Vallejos in my recent content. We'll do a quick refresher on that. So, Vallejos is a counterboxer, at his core, meaning that he really wants you to throw first. He will. Okay, let's actually split this. This will be calf kicks. This will be counterboxing. But the calf kicks lean into the counterboxing. Because basically what he wants to do is, if you're not going to engage, if you're not going to be reckless because you know that he's a good counterboxer, he's just going to pepper you with calf kicks until you're forced to engage. So ultimately he wants to get to the counterboxing no matter what. Now what he's going to do from here, two big options, which are slip right overhands and slip more generic and throw combo. The combos kind of lean towards, I mean, they're all pretty similar. We don't need to for this, I guess. The combos are usually head, body, head. Sometimes body, body, head. But a lot of the times he'll start out with a right cross or hook, then go left to the body, and then go right again up top. He has different combos of it, doesn't really matter. But that is ultimately his overall game plan. And that's all we've really seen out of him. He hasn't been extremely proactive, which is the only reason I don't think he should be as massive a favorite as he is. Because on the other hand, when we have Danny Silva, who does not suck by any means, so I don't know why the odds are making it seem like he sucks. But he has 3 different game plans, which are, all of you go, please. He also likes to throw the calf kicks. Though he's not doing it specifically to make you engage, he's just doing it to throw calf kicks and do damage. Fair enough. But then he has, like, okay, pressure boxing. He's not going to really box on the back-ish foot like Vallejos. I say back-ish foot because realistically he just wants you to throw first, even if he's moving forwards. And then he has the takedowns. And he will mix all of these very equally. So it could be a slight problem for Vallejos, who's only really had like one-dimensional opponents so far. Even John Silva didn't really wrestle much in the fight, and kind of just was looking for the read to eventually get a finish, which didn't end up happening, but he got very close in round 2. So Vallejos should win this fight, because Danny Silva is going to start with the calf kicks and the pressure boxing. I think Vallejos can deal with the calf kicks, and I think the pressure boxing is probably going to open up counters for Vallejos. But let's say that Danny Silva starts with the takedowns, and then Vallejos starts slowing down a little bit in round 2, which we have seen. Then the pressure boxing might be more problematic for Vallejos, because I don't know if Vallejos is going to necessarily have the same sting on his punches if he starts getting tired. So Vallejos definitely should win, and he should get a finish, but I'm not 100% positive he will. He might even win like a 29-28 here, where like Silva is trying to get a finish in round 3 and like really putting on the pressure and just Vallejos surviving. So even though Vallejos really should win, this is going to be a much more fight. This is going to be a much more fun fight than the odds would suggest. Vallejos 5'7", Elliot 5'7", John Silva 5'7". This is not a coincidence. Isn't Vallejos shorter? I think he's like 5'6", right? Was Liao doing square stance with his hands down? Yeah, I have no clue what Liao was doing, but I've seen Liao do it before, so I'm not shocked. I did think Liao would win because I didn't think like a 41-year-old Salikov would be able to hurt him, but I'm not shocked because his striking defense has been anticlimactic. What do you think of Ilya using data analytics for breaking down his opponents? Yes, that is going to be the future. That is why I'm trying to go in that direction with making products for fighters, is to make it so that like you guys who don't have access to the same resources right now as Ilya spending like $100,000 on a camp can basically have enough analytics and algorithmic support so that you can actually optimize your training, again, without that crazy investment. Hey, Lord of Gaming. Park versus Taira, we'll get there, yeah. Silva is 5'8". Isn't he 5'7" on paper? I don't know. A finish within 12 minutes or decision was more likely. I'm going to say that a Vallejos finish is more likely, but I would not be surprised either way. So this isn't a fight where it's just like, okay, I know the outcome. It's a fight where I can see definitely multiple possible paths this fight takes, especially if Danny Silva's camp is like, okay, we do not want to box with this guy early. We are going to wrestle. Then like this fight could get a lot more complicated. Because I don't know if Vallejos is going to necessarily be prepared for that. Silva does have legitimate BJJ in wrestling. Thoughts on Jacoby Smith? He's got to get better at cardio. I mean, he's dangerous, but he doesn't have a lot of striking nuance, and he doesn't have cardio. So we'll have to see how he comes out next fight. Is there any way Jan beats Merab in a rematch? It's very unlikely, because Merab's style is basically made to beat Jan. I mean, like, Jan takes time to get his reads, and he needs space, basically. Like, it's not just like, oh, he can get his reads over the course of a fight. It's like, no, he needs time to process those reads as well. Merab just doesn't give you time to process. He just keeps doing stuff. I would love to break down MMA fighters using data science, but I don't know where to start, really. So breaking down fighters with data science is complex, especially because we don't have great stats. It really has to be something that you manually do for a fighter, which is why, again, I have products that I'm going to talk about more so as I introduce them soon. Right now it is in alpha for those of you who have like been paying attention. I'm going to say it's in beta now. It's very close to functional. Everything is working. I just want to basically stress test it so it doesn't break if a bunch of people join at once. But yeah, I'll be talking about that more soon. I am very excited for this fight, though. Like, this fight night, like, in terms of name value, doesn't have great stuff, but in terms of fights will be spectacular, in my opinion. Imavov or Kaio, I will get to that afterwards, because I want to talk about that matchup a little bit more than a brief snippet. This is another one where I'm not going to go too far into the graphics here. Everyone knows who Magny is, everyone knows who Santos is at this point. Magny is just basically going to try to clinch. I mean, that's all Magny wants to do, is basically pump the jab and stuff on the outside, get to the clinch, try to work for takedowns, but even if he can't, just hold you against the fence, land a little bit of damage, etc. Magny is a very effective decision fighter. He can, of course, pull off submissions late in fights. It is absolutely crazy to me that Magny subbed D-Rod, and then D-Rod just beat Hollins, but that's Holland for you, I guess. So yeah, that's Magny. Dos Santos, Capoeira, very powerful striker. Knocked out Strickland for anyone who's seen that knockout. It was a really fun fight. He has grappling as well, which he has gone to more in recent years. His stats aren't spectacular on it. Let's go to that. Yeah, like his stats only say 68% striking defense, takedown defense and 20% takedown accuracy. Not really accurate, because you could see in the beginning of his career he had some weird fights in terms of wrestling, but then got much better regarding that as his career went along. So I don't feel like it's very representative. Zaleski definitely has more paths to victory here, because Zaleski definitely can knock out Magny, and Magny seemed extremely chinny lately. Besides even the fact that, like, okay, Protez is a hard striker, getting knocked out by what hit him was the very strange part. He barely got grazed and just got absolutely flatlined, which, yes, can happen, not very common. It definitely, in my opinion, suggests that Magny's on the way out chin-wise. So I do have to lean Dos Santos here, because he just has to land one strike, and it will probably finish Magny, and even if it's not working, I think he could get the edge in the pure wrestling. Because Magny's, like, actual ability to defend takedowns does not exist. 53% takedown defense. So if Zaleski shoots first, I'm pretty sure he's going to get the takedowns, and I do think that Zaleski is capable of subbing Magny on the ground. So even though Zaleski could very much knock out Magny, I'm actually going to pick Zaleski by submission, because I do think it is more than viable here. What would have been your prediction if Finney didn't pull out versus Pulyaev? I would have picked Pulyaev, but I wouldn't have been confident, because Pulyaev's wrestling defense is not nearly as good as people think it is. Like, he went to a split decision with Dylan Budka for reference, and looked terrible. I think that if Finney survived round one, his chances of winning were actually reasonable. So it would have been a very mild lead towards Pulyaev. Early or late finish? I'm going to say early. I'm going to say round one finish from Dos Santos. What's your single most unpopular MMA take? My most unpopular MMA take is probably that Nate Diaz had a reasonable chance of finishing Chimaev. Jeff Neal or Protez? Very hard one. I'm kind of 50-50 on that right now. I'll go more into it later. WMMA fight, so we're not really going to go into the graphics here. Rose is the more technical fighter. She has a good leg kick, but doesn't really necessarily aim it properly at the calf. To have instances in which she's landing like 100 leg kicks rather, and can't get her opponent out of there because it's just not doing enough damage. It's good for points, but it's not good for really doing enough damage to win the fight. Cornell is a little bit less technical, but will throw with bad intentions and has the submission ability to make herself like somewhat dangerous on the ground. I'm going to lean Cornell, even though Rosa is the technically better fighter here, because I think Cornell is just going to actually fight for it, while Rosa isn't. Like, we've seen Rosa just fall behind in fights and not really like have the dog in her to come back and try to get that round 3. Cornell is just going to go for it the whole 15 minutes. So I do really think that even though she's an underdog, even though she is definitely the worst fighter, technically speaking, she should be able to win this. Explain, please. So, the real question with Chimaev versus Nate Diaz is, how is Chimaev going to finish Nate Diaz? And you know he was going to try. You know that Chimaev was going to come out extremely hot and look for a first round finish or sub or TKO or whatever. And Nate is just a zombie. Like, you could keep blasting him the entire round with punches. I don't think Chimaev was going to be able to get a TKO. The only time that Nate has been TKO'd, if I remember correctly, was off a head kick, and it was still a TKO. He didn't even actually go out at all. So, and then in terms of subs, I don't see Chimaev subbing Nate Diaz. Like, Nate Diaz might not have the ability to impose his subs offensively that often, but defensively, he was near perfect. He is a very high-level BJJ practitioner. So even though Chimaev would have beaten up Nate for round 1, round 2, maybe even round 3, we get to round 4, and Chimaev has just tried to kill Nate for 3 rounds and probably have nothing left in the tank. And then that's where we're looking at, oh, Chimaev shoots a sloppy takedown and Nate pulls a guillotine. Does Dariush get chinned by basically everyone in the top 15? A lot of them, realistically. The Dariush versus Moicano, like, it was not a great showing from either of them, in my opinion. I like Dariush. I just think that he's not going to be able to deal with these newer prospects. Ryan Loader, better wrestler than Budka, so what happened to him? But Ryan Loader also has 0 striking whatsoever, which is why he just got chinned immediately. And he also didn't, like, force the fight into wrestling. How would Ilya versus John, the version that fought Vallejos, go? The version that fought Vallejos, Ilya definitely wins. It's a much more of a question now. Even if Chimaev doesn't put him out, he doesn't have anything threatening coming at him. The guillotine from Nate is definitely threatening. If Chimaev took a bad shot, he was getting subbed. You think Khamzat doesn't finish Nate in 2? No, I don't really think he does, because I don't think he was going to be able to get enough power on anything to do so. You can hit Nate as many times as you want. You have to hit him with something absolutely ridiculous to drop him. And then to finish him, it's even more, because he's gotten dropped several times and come back just fine. How about prime Nick Diaz versus Chimaev? Yeah, I think Nick would win as well, because I don't think Nick was going to get finished, and he would just pour it on in rounds 4 and 5. Dariush wanted to welcome Ilya to 155. That would have been a murder. Yeah, I agree. I actually agree now that you explained that very well. Thank you. But yeah, we'll go on to main card here. Brenner versus Rebecki. We will go back to... okay, I don't think we need graphics for this one. This one is pretty straightforward. So, Brenner is always fun because he's always going to get into a war. He is looking to end the fight constantly. Like, he's looking for bombs. He's going to throw a very hard lead left hook. He's going to throw, like, his 1-2 isn't even like a 1-2. It's like a 1 and throw your entire body weight behind the 2, but don't make it an overhands. So, Brenner's entertaining. If he gets taken down, he'll go for the leg locks. He'll try to get takedowns and go for the back, but he hasn't really had the ability to get takedowns. On the other hand, Rebecki is also likes a war. Like, he thrives in a war. It's no coincidence that he hurt Zellhuber after getting dropped, because the fight got a bit more chaotic, and when it gets chaotic, he thrives. So, Rebecki is going to be the more technical kickboxer for sure. He doesn't have the same power as Brenner, but he's going to have more volume, higher pace, and he's probably just going to be technical enough to not get hit by something absolutely ridiculous and put out. A lot of people are arguing that, like, oh, if Brenner incorporates his wrestling, he might be able to mess up Rebecki, get his back sub, etc. But the problem is Brenner's wrestling just isn't really there. Like, if we look at his track record with his wrestling, Brenner is the only person who is not able to take down Joel Alvarez upon trying. Like, he went 0 for 5 on takedowns. And look at Joel Alvarez against everyone else. He has 40% takedown defense, and all of that 40% is from Elves Brenner defending takedowns. I think maybe he defended 1 against Drakkar also. No, he didn't even defend 1. Yeah, I think that's literally the only takedowns he's defended in the UFC have been against Elves Brenner. The fact that Brenner couldn't take him down says a lot about his wrestling ability, in my opinion. So, I do think this is going to become just a pure stand-up fight. Rebecki has absolutely no reason to shoot a takedown because, yeah, Brenner is dangerous off his back, and Rebecki isn't going to sub you on top or anything. So he's just going to be most likely the more technical boxer here. Now, the problem that Rebecki has with certain guys, like Hakparast, you can argue it was a robbery or not, but it was very close, is that when people keep things very clean, just the technical 1-2 down the middle, which is pure speed, no real, like, over-aggression, no overextending, and so on, he has a bit of a problem getting his boxing going, because he kind of wants to get on the inside and throw combos there. He doesn't really want to just trade with 1-2s on the outside and such. So I could see Rebecki having problems with a lot of the more technical strikers at 155, but I do feel like that Brenner's a pretty tailor-made matchup for him, because this fight is going to be ugly. And in an ugly fight, Rebecki is just the better fighter. Is this live? Yeah. How far does Joel Alvarez go at welterweight? We'll have to see how he looks there. If he puts on size and still has like the ability to knock people out as easily, despite like maybe the speed discrepancy will make up for the fact that he's not going to be massive now. It really depends how he transitions to not being massive. I think that skill-wise he could go pretty far, but he is a fighter that leaned on being massive, getting a lot of those knees up and such. So I'm not confident that he'll do spectacularly, even though he definitely could. Prime Kane or Tom? Definitely Tom. Prime Kane was even still too hittable. Great breakdowns, thank you. Rebecki could have won that fight cleanly. He didn't listen to his corner or use all his tools. He only started double jabbing halfway through round 2. Yeah, he definitely should have won it better. I think he had the skill set to beat Haqparast. But he is a little bit, yeah, I mean, he's just not great at fighting technically on the outside and then closing a distance when he needs to. But if his opponent gives it to him for free, he'll make it work. That's also what kind of happened in the Zellhuber fight, is that he was having problems when Zellhuber was just fighting on the outside, but then Zellhuber started trading in the pocket for absolutely no reason. Rebecki was like, okay, I'm just better here. How do you think a Silva or Adesanya versus Khamzat at middleweight fight goes? Realistically, Chimaev probably subs them. I'm not wildly confident, though, because there's a chance Adesanya is able to survive. He's very good at dodging takedowns on the fence, specifically. So I'm not confident, but I would pick Chimaev. I'm gonna drink some water. Give me a second. How do you think prediction on DDP versus Khamzat? Yeah, so I said this earlier. I do think that DDP has an advantage because I do think that Khamzat's path to victory is just the round 1 finish. And after that, he's going to have a lot of problems. So when you have such a narrow window for victory, I am going to favor DDP. John Silva or Prime Tony? John Silva. John Silva is just too good. Finally caught a live viewers. Glad to see you here. How close is your channel to accessing memberships and donos? So I think I could technically apply for monetization right now. I am slightly worried about it because of the fact that UFC does copyright like very aggressively. So the fact that I'm not monetizing right now might be protecting the long form videos a bit, but I will have to do more research on that. Brenner going to eat shots and end up losing a decision? Yeah, I think so. So I don't think that Rebecki is going to finish Brenner because Brenner's just stupidly durable and was eating a lot of shots from Alvarez, who hits a hell of a lot harder than Rebecki in my opinion. But I do think that Rebecki is just going to put the volume on win decision. Who do you think beats John Silva? Right now, I couldn't think of anyone. All right, we'll go to Rebecki versus Duncan. So, I don't think I need graphics for this one. We'll save the graphics for the main event now since we're close. Rebecki is very, like, technically on paper small for the weight class, but he makes up for that by being extremely dense and powerful. So everything he throws is just extremely clubbing, which is why he gets knocked down so easily, even if he just hits people with, like, pretty much nothing. Rebecki is all gas, no brakes type of style. We saw that he got punished by Diego for that because Diego was able to just survive early and then when Rebecki gassed out, finish him, of course. But against Orolbai, Rebecki was able to keep up the pace for longer. He did, of course, end up gassing out in later round 3, but he was able to do it for like 2.5-ish rounds, which is more than enough than he'll need against most people, realistically, because most people aren't going to survive the shots that Orolbai took. Orolbai is just stupidly durable for some reason. Rebecki will look for a lot of takedowns. He is going to look for the ground and pound. How exactly he treats each matchup differs. Sometimes he's more submission heavy, sometimes he's more like ground and pound, or even just straight up inside leg kick on the feet and just strike to try to find a finish. Against Razdabov, he basically just treated it purely like a kickboxing fight. Just kept blasting the inside calf kick and just dropped them multiple times for the finish. Duncan, on the other hand, basically wants you to just have success until you get reckless and then catch something there. Duncan has spent the last 2 fights basically just getting beaten up and then finding a finish. Because, let's see here. So, the stats for Vucenic fight don't look terrible for Duncan, because Duncan did drop him, like, immediately into the fight, because I think Vucenic just wasn't awake at that point. So, Duncan looked good in round 1. But then when you look at round 2, Vucenic is up 3 times on strikes, then just decides to shoot directly into a guillotine and get subbed. Like, Vucenic looked like he was outclassing him, and if he just kept it on the feet, it would have been an easy fight. But for some reason, when people are fighting Duncan, they have the very weird compulsion to throw themselves into guillotines. We saw it with Balaji Oki also. Oki is absolutely just tearing him up on the feet, decides he needs to shoot a takedown, almost gets subbed, gets back to the feet, decides again he needs to shoot another takedown, and throws himself in the guillotine and gets subs. So, I don't know what it is about Duncan, but something about him just compulsively controls his opponents to shoot their heads into guillotines. Duncan should lose this fight. Like, he is definitely the worst fighter, literally everywhere here. However, you could just never be confident with a Duncan fight because he has a way of just outperforming his skill set. Like, even the Torres fight, he rocked Torres on the feet before Torres was able to ragdoll him and sub him. So, I am not confident in Rebecki, even though Rebecki should just beat him up and knock him out in the second round here. I am going to pick Rebecki by second round TKO, but I am not confident because of what we've seen from Duncan. I got a feeling Duncan might chin him, to be honest. Yeah, I would not be shocked. I don't think it will happen, but I won't be shocked. Duncan's career is hilarious, yeah. Vucenic career is sad, yes, agreed. What do you think about Rebecki training along with Duncan? Do you think that can affect the results of the fight? I don't think it really matters. I think their skill levels are just so widely, just so far apart, right? Like, Rebecki is just better everywhere. Rebecki is better on the feet. His wrestling is much better. The only thing that Duncan might be better at is just defensive subs. Like, yeah, I think that Duncan has a better guillotine than Rebecki. We haven't seen Rebecki pull a guillotine, to my knowledge. But even in terms of, like, pure grappling, Rebecki is better also. So, it's another one of those fights where if Rebecki loses, it's just a fight IQ issue. Late finish or decision. I'm going to go with round 2 finish. I think Rebecki's going to do a lot of damage on the feet, then maybe get it down, ground and pound a bit. Duncan will fluke this? Yeah, I would not be surprised. Duncan by mind control, valid. Fight last over 10 minutes. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say round 3 does not start, but I'm not confident. GSP or DDP at middleweight? That's a good one. I'm not sure. I would have to think about that more. Thoughts on Dolidze versus Fluffy? I don't know why Fluffy is such a massive favorite, because Dolidze is definitely a bad matchup for him, but I'll go more into that later. Now that we saw MVP successfully move up to middleweight, are we going to see him versus Adesanya at some point? I think they're friends, so I don't think we're going to see that. Okay. Now, this is going to be the fun graphical breakdown here. So, I need to get used to the hotkeys. I could definitely do this much faster. So Taira actually has underrated boxing. He threw a counter cross that hurt Royval very badly in round 1, and he didn't do badly in the striking in general, despite being a grappler. His striking is obviously not striker level, but it is very clean. Like, he's going to throw basically just a fundamental jabs, basic, like, 1-2 counter cross, etc. So it's nothing that's going to blow your mind, but it's very clean and it has power. Other thing he's going to focus on a lot is kicks. Because he's slightly on the taller side compared to a lot of his opponents, though not all of them, he is going to focus a lot on the kicks. He throws a lot of calf kicks, kicks to the body, etc. This is also because he's not afraid of getting taken down, so why not throw the kicks? If his opponents take him down, like, let's say he gets taken down, then he's just going to threaten subs and sweep constantly until he gets back to the feet. But his actual wrestling is mainly body lock focused. Now, he's willing to shoot in on a single or double. He likes his opponent to overextend because he's going to use his boxing to basically set up the body lock wrestling. He'll basically strike, throw kicks, etc., force his opponent to come in, and then after that, let's see if I can... Nah, that doesn't really work. We'll free do it. So he's going to set up his body lock wrestling with the boxing and the kicks even, just force his opponent to come in, get it from there. Then, once he gets the body lock, he is going to try to go to the back. Once he gets the back take, he's just going to get the what's it called? Why am I blanking on the term? Body triangle. Yes, he's going to get a body triangle in, and then just try to sub you constantly. He might switch to the armbar if you're defending the rear naked choke. So against, I don't even remember his name, this was so long ago. Against CJ Vergara, he attempted like rear naked choke like 7 times, and then just ended up switching to the armbar because he just got annoyed and frustrated that he couldn't get the rear naked choke. So he has a plethora of submissions from the back take. So we'll just say RNC, we'll just say armbar / ground and pound. He'll throw ground and pound, try to loosen things up here. The other thing is, let's say that he can't get the back take off the body lock, or he gets a takedown that doesn't let him get to the body lock in general. Let's just say he ends up getting a sweep or something, which does happen, especially if like he's getting uncomfortable and such. Then he's going to look for a lot of ground and pounds / subs to pass. He's going to use those to pass into full mounts or maybe side control at times, and then he's going to look for a finish from there. So Taira's system is very intricate because he will use his striking like a fundamental striker to set up his wrestling. So even though his purpose is not to finish you with the striking, he's perfectly happy to do it if he can. So he'll commit to whatever he needs to here, which is what makes him so dangerous, as I talked about in my Instagram reel on him. Because he's willing to do pretty much anything he needs to, and he's decent at all of it. Now, Park, on the other hand, Park, even though a lot of people see him as a grappler, in my opinion, he is more of a striker. But we'll separate these. Now, his striking is split into his boxing and then calf kicks. He throws a lot of calf kicks. He doesn't really throw other kicks, he just throws calf kicks over and over, whether he's on the front foot or the back foot. He throws them a little bit too frequently, in my opinion. The reason I say that is because he has gotten countered off these calf kicks numerous times, and he hasn't fixed that issue. So, the boxing is mainly 2-3s. He doesn't... Okay, actually I shouldn't say that. His boxing is split into 2 parts, let's say. Heavy jabs or 2-3s. He doesn't really combine the two. He doesn't really set up a jab with the jab cross. He just goes heavy jabs or throws 2-3s and then fights in the pocket. I do think if he integrated the two of these, he would have a lot more success in the striking in general. Because even though like he is powerful, it's just there's a striking nuance that honestly just doesn't feel like it's there right now. In the grappling, he is also very body lock dependent. But his ability to get there is not quite what Taira's is. So he kind of needs like a very fortunate shot or just his opponent to make a massive mistake, which is why I say that even though he has good grappling, I would say he's really like not as much a grappler. So we'll say like this is like a half X in that I don't really think it's going to play a massive role in this fight because his path to victory is keep it on the feet here. He doesn't want to wrestle with Taira. I'm sure he could if Taira throws like a bunch of calf kicks, maybe Park shoots for a takedown to mix things up. I wouldn't personally game plan it like that for him here. I think that he should stick to the striking because he's had a lot of success on the feet compared to Taira in the past. Now, I think the problem for Park in this matchup in general is the fact that Taira just has so many options when it comes to countering like what Park wants to do. The heavy jabs are good. You should definitely stick to this. If I'm game planning for Park, I'm focusing a lot on the heavy jabs. But the 2-3 is going to let Taira shoot under that and probably get to the body lock very effectively. The calf kicks are going to get countered by Taira's cross, and Taira can knock you out with that cross. So I think essentially, over the course of the 25 minutes, Park is just going to make enough mistakes that Taira will catch him in something. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I am actually leaning a TKO. I think that Park is going to end up getting too aggressive on the feet, maybe with the calf kicks, maybe with just the 2-3s, and then end up eating Taira's clean cross. And then Taira has proven that if he rocks you on the feet, he's not necessarily going to hunt this up. He's willing to just TKO on the ground. Did that against, what's his name? Carlos Hernandez, right? He wasn't able to get the sub as easily as he wanted, so he just rocked him and then knocked him out. So I am leaning towards that is how this fight is going to go. I am relatively confident Taira wins this. I do think that Park has a very high ceiling. I do think that he probably would have beaten, what's his name? I'm just blanking on all the names today. Who he was scheduled against. Steve Erceg. Yeah, there we go. He probably would have beaten Erceg. But I don't think that he's a clean enough striker or grappler to really beat Taira. You need to be so good in the striking, or you need to be so unorthodox and be able to hold a pace like Royval, and Park doesn't just have an X factor like that can do it. Who's going to piece up Albazi? Yeah, Taira is going to absolutely destroy Albazi. I don't think that would have been mildly competitive. Park has more danger, right? Like, even though I am picking Taira to win, Park has the ability to get a TKO. It's possible. But I am going to say that this is a very Taira favorite matchup. Apparently Taira is injured. Honestly, even if he's injured, he still probably takes this, but that could be interesting to watch. I start cruising after I gas out. I don't fight smart. My mind is on autopilot. You need to have a plan for when you gas out, and you need to drill that plan while you are gassed out. So if you're going to be able to do something in a fight effectively, you have to make sure you drill in advance. So gas yourself out, do a bunch of running, whatever you have to do, and then drill exactly what you want your game plan to be there. Do a few rounds of sparring after that, and basically stick to that game plan effectively. What do you think about Taira versus Asakura? It should be pretty easy for Taira, realistically. He's not going to be as reckless as Pantoja because Taira knows he doesn't want to eat a bomb from Asakura, so he'll just wait for Asakura to make a mistake, take him down, sub him. Who do you think will be champ after Pantoja? It will either be Taira or Van. I don't know which of them. Are you low on Erceg, I assume you're asking? I'm not low on Erceg. I think he just got pushed way too quickly, and the way his career is handled, he's just not going to have success. He needs a massive step down in competition. Canelo or Crawford? I don't know boxing as well as I know MMA, but I'm going to lean Crawford because I think it's just better. Canelo, of course, has more power, though, for sure. Any good value picks for this card, considering how crazy some of the odds are? I would say Nakamura minus 3.5 is probably good here, because I'm not positive he finishes Fletcher, but I don't think he loses a round. Does Waldo beat Sergey Pavlovich? I don't think so, but it is possible. I think the problem is I don't expect him to be able to hurt Sergey that easily. And if he can't, Sergey is probably just going to walk him down because Waldo doesn't have spectacular footwork or anything. I would say, what game plan does Waldo need to use? He needs to stay on the outside, use his jab a lot and frustrate Sergey, and then try to walk him into an overhand or something. Erceg or Ode. Here's the weird thing, right? Erceg should beat Ode, realistically, like skill for skill. But it's one of those weird matchups where Ode is so fast, and Erceg has had such a head movement problem that I would not be surprised if Ode knocked out Erceg. So if you want the logical pick, it's Erceg. But it's like, okay, with Erceg on a loss streak, and an Ode coming off of a highlight, it's just one of those weird things where I feel like Ode might get the knockout. We made UFC Japan already, I agree. What will MMA look like if everyone is using data analytics? We're going to see a lot more intricate game plans, I believe. Opinions of Taira's striking defense. It obviously needs improvement, but at the same time, it's not as bad as a lot of people want to pretend it is. Like, he hasn't gotten hit that much outside of the Royval fight. And Royval is a weird fighter to deal with, especially because of the volume he's going to keep up. Do you think welterweight is moving on from Shavkat, or are we going to see him soon? Apparently he wants a number 1 contenders fight at the end of the year, so that should be interesting. I was thinking the same, but Pavlich doesn't really check leg kicks. Waldo spams them. Yeah, but then Waldo has to do a very good job at staying on the outside. If he's just going to focus on jabs and calf kicks and dance on the outside, it's possible. I just don't think he has good enough footwork. But it's possible. Can Kopylov bounce back and make a name for himself amongst the top 15? Honestly, I don't think so. I've never thought Kopylov is good. I just don't think he has the skills or talents or anything. Would I might chin him just watch the Kai tape? Yeah, and it's very possible. How do you think, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name, would do in the UFC? Which organization is he from again? Plus how long Royval is. Yeah, exactly. Shavkat or Brady? I'm going to lean Brady. I think he can basically do what Gary did, except a lot more effectively. Van beats Taira. It's possible. It's a very tough matchup to call. He was asking for a champ fight, not a contender fight, right? He changed his mind. He was asking for a champ fight. I think the UFC probably made it clear to him that he wasn't going to get it, and then he finally asked for a contender fight. Shavkat wants your Rakhmonov. Yeah, exactly. What's your take on Pereira versus Ankalaev and Roundtree versus Yuri? So Yuri should kill Roundtree. And part of the reason I believe that is even if Yuri's having problems in the stand-up, which I don't expect, but it's possible, he can take down Roundtree. Roundtree has terrible takedown defense, and Yuri, even though he doesn't always go to his wrestling, has it. Ryzen. Okay, I don't follow Ryzen that well, so I couldn't give you a good answer there, sorry. Pereira versus Ankalaev is a weird thing, because I still feel like Pereira has the stylistic advantage, but the reality also is once a fighter starts looking old, it usually doesn't get better from there. So I'm very 50-50 on it, honestly. I wish Park wins, but Taira too good for Park. Yeah, probably right now, realistically. What's your thoughts on Sadikov? I don't think Nicholas Mota is the hardest test, and I think Sadikov gets hit a bit too easily. He's fun to watch. I just think he really needs to improve his defense if he wants to go much further. How many takedowns do you see Bashy getting Saturday? I mean, it just depends if he gets an early sub or not. I wouldn't bet that if that's your intention. Because he could get a sub in 1 takedown, or it could take him 3 or 4. Really hard to say. DDP or Ankalaev? I'm going to say DDP. I think his game plan is just too good. How does JDM versus Ilya go? Very, very hard to say. I actually don't even want to make a prediction here yet until I see them each fight one more time. Will Islam's clinch work be the deciding factor versus JDM? I think he's going to struggle getting to the clinch, so I don't really think so, but it's possible. I think Pereira has a better chance this time because he can defend the takedowns. Yeah, he's also had a lot more rest this time, so I think it's going to be a weirder fight. I think someone's going to get finished by round 2, I just don't know who. What do you think of Pico versus Murphy? I talked about that more in depth earlier, but I was saying that I think Murphy has, of course, the more nuanced game, so he probably wins, but I also wouldn't be shocked if Pico caught him with something because he only needs 1 shot to end the fight. What do you rate the level of competition regional scenes per area? Europe or Oz has the highest level of competition right now. So I still do actually think the US has the highest level of regional competition. I think that they just don't build guys very well in US, where in Australia or Europe, they do a better job of protecting them a little bit early and making sure they get the experience they need. I'd recommend to watch his tape. He's very good and he's only 24. Yeah, I'll check it out. Yuri just needs to drill low kick defense mechanics and he's good. Yeah, or just put enough pressure that the low kick doesn't affect him. How close is DDP to Silva's middleweight GOAT after he beats Hamzat? Probably just 1 more defense, honestly. Who's your favorite fighter to watch purely entertainment-wise? Probably Silva, John Silva. When did you start film studying MMA? That's hard to answer because if you're asking in terms of like creating content or whatever, then it was only like say 2 or so years ago. But I kind of always just like film studied whenever I watched in the past, just in general. So I've been watching UFC since like 2015-ish. I think JDM is a better overall boxer and overall striker than Ilya. He throws a lot more kicks than Ilya. He is overall more diverse. The thing about Ilya is that he's very good at doing what he does. Like, he's spectacular at using his footwork to set up the overhand and the left hook. He doesn't have much nuance besides that, but to be fair, if you could land that, it doesn't matter. You don't need nuance. Nazim has a high ceiling if he works on his defense. Yeah, it's fair. Do you think Manel Kopp overestimating Makaev's wrestling was the reason why he didn't open up in the striking and why he lost and it was boring? No, I think Kopp, again, like, remember, Kopp got cheap-shotted before that fight and got dropped, apparently. So I think that played a large role. And I think that's a lot of the reason why they're not going to allow Mokaev back into the UFC, because the UFC doesn't really care if you create hype by doing dumb stuff. They care if you impact a fight by doing dumb stuff. So the fact that Kopp got dropped and then it was a really boring fight because of that probably led into the lack of urgency to re-sign Mokaev. Imavov or Kaio. Okay, yeah, so we'll get into that now. So it's a tough fight to call because of the fact that Imavov does have some very specific identifiable weaknesses that against a team like the Fighting Nerds, you don't want existing. The main one, as I talked about in the reel, is the calf kick. He also has certain things he does in wrestling and boxing and so on, but that's a much longer explanation. On the other hand, Imavov is kind of just better in most places. Like, his boxing is a lot better, it's faster, it's more powerful. His wrestling is debatable whether it's better or worse, but I don't think that Kaio is going to take him down and control him by any means. So this will probably take place on the feet, where Imavov is a little bit better. So I have to pick Imavov. The problem is just, again, Fighting Nerds game planning is so good that you don't want weaknesses. Nakamura more than 2.5 takedowns. I think that's very possible. I lean towards yes. Any standouts on Contender Series? I'd have to look through the roster for this season. Oh, is Pico the favorite? Pico's the favorite? If Pico's the favorite, I'm betting Murphy. I will say that. Thoughts on Prime Fedor? How do you think he'd do in UFC when heavyweight division was in its prime? I don't think Prime Fedor was particularly good, in all honesty. I think he got a very high reputation from beating up a lot of cans. I think Poetan's going to lose to Ankalaev again. Ankalaev's hand speed in boxing is too much for Alex. Alex could definitely lose again. I do think it's 50-50. But I don't think the hand speed in boxing is too much. Like, I don't think Ankalaev's hand speed is spectacular. His boxing is pretty solid on the front foot, but his hand speed is nothing special. Like, Rakic was a lot faster than him. Mokaev pulled the shorts to stop a knee bar. Yeah, Mokaev was very dirty in that whole sequence. How would you pick Holloway versus Arman Tsarukyan? I would pick Holloway, because I don't think that Arman has the ability to hurt Holloway, and Holloway's scrambling and takedown defense is extraordinarily underrated. I was surprised to see Hill not go for the clinch at all against Khalil. I was surprised to see Hill just not go for it at all, in all honesty. Hill kind of just needed to blitz forwards, in my opinion, because Khalil's not exactly the best at striking off the back foot, and Hill had the power advantage, in my opinion. Imavov will hurt Kyle, very possible. I think Kyle just outlasts him, holds him against the fence, and clinches. It's possible. I do think Imavov has gotten better at preventing that, though. Do you think Silva even needs Fighting Nerds game planning with his ability to adapt during the fight? I mean, it's certainly a plus, but do I think he needs it? No, I think he would be okay with a different team as well. How many hours per week do you spend studying film? There's no concrete number. It's just however it ends up being to make my content for the most part. And Will Souza is someone to look out for on Dana White's Contender Series Knockout Roofie. Okay, yeah, we'll definitely check him out. Pico is minus 135, at least on ESPN. That is wild. Who's the favorite? Wow, okay. Who would you favor in Adesanya-Strickland rematch? Strickland. Adesanya just does not have the style to beat Strickland. He's only the favorite since Leoner's on short notice. Short notice, full camp, whatever. I mean, Murphy should win. I mean, that's weird in my opinion. GSP or Imavov at middleweight. I will say GSP because I think it is possible to take Imavov down and control him. And I think GSP would have a good enough game plan to do so. Jamal Hill and Michael Johnson are like Pokemon in the same evolutionary line. Fair. Do you watch ONE FC at all? Yes. Not as consistently as I would like, but I do. Same footwork. Fair. What's your average time spending? I assume that means watching film a week, rough estimate. I mean, at least 10 hours. Probably more. What would you rank the Fighting Nerds worst to best? I would say the worst is probably Protez, just because he has such clear holes in his game. Then Kaio, then Rufi, then John Silva's best. DDP or Imavov. So, I was very confident in the past that Imavov is a terrible matchup for DDP. And skill-wise, he still is. I just don't know if I'd bet against DDP's game planning, so I think it's very 50-50. Phil has no footwork, yes, he has no footwork. What do you train? Mainly striking. I mean, I don't train nearly as much as I did in the past. When I did train constantly, I did train mostly striking. I guess it would be equivalent to like kickboxing-ish with a karate background. Betting is always reality, so I think you mean isn't always reality? I'm not sure what you're saying. What's your IRL job? Right now, this stuff. I mean, I'm trying to make this a full-time thing, and the income is not spectacular, but luckily the betting service is growing, which is making it somewhat livable. When I can push out the new product for fighters, hopefully I have an actual income. Is John Silva really the GOAT? I mean, we'll see. He might be, eventually. I agree, but Pico seems to have serious power, but so did Josh Emmett. Yeah, you have to be able to land the power. Stipe or Tom, both in their prime. That's a tough one. I think Stipe would have a chance of countering him, because Tom is very open in the pocket. Diego Lopez isn't that good when it comes to cutting the cage. Volk was constantly circling to the center because of that. How can John use it for his advantage? I mean, John's just going to be able to walk him down and basically line up his straight very easily, in my opinion. Do you think that Hernandez is a nightmare matchup for Hamzat? So Hamzat may be able to finish Hernandez early because Hernandez is not the most durable. But if Hernandez survives, then yeah, Hamzat's screwed. How much do you make from gambling a month? Not a crazy amount by any means. I mean, the algorithm does very well, but I'm not starting with a massive base amount, so it's not incredibly high. Thoughts on Murphy versus the one dude that ran away for the full third round versus Cater? I'm gonna pick Murphy. Ankalaev or Roundtree. Ankalaev, probably. I think Volk beats Silva. I also am very biased. I just don't see how Volk could beat Silva, because I don't think he's going to take him down. And on the feet, even if Volk has the advantage, which honestly I don't see, but maybe it's possible, Silva just needs one shot over 25 minutes, and I don't see Volk finishing or hurting Silva. And Silva has much better footwork and timing than someone like Lopez. What do you think Pereira needs to do against Ankalaev in the rematch? Pereira needs to be a lot more aggressive, throw a lot more jabs, and also throw the head kick more often. Rakic did good work early against Ankalaev by throwing the head kick nonstop, so Ankalaev couldn't throw the his left hand, which would be a good idea in my opinion. I got Izzy in a rematch. His mindset will be different, as he'll move forwards instead of trying to counter. Izzy cannot move forwards, though, against Strickland. That's the problem, is he doesn't have the tools to do that to Strickland. He doesn't have the ability to stop the jab, especially because Strickland's just going to hand fight. If Izzy moves forwards, he's just going to move into a counter. Hamzat could low-key knock out Hernandez. Yeah, it's very possible. Bro, you're the UFC analysis goat. If anyone could make this a full-time job, it's you. Thank you. Love to see you on the commentator panels. That would be fun, yeah. Glad to hear it. Where are you from? New York. Volk's shin is gone. I wouldn't say it was ever spectacular in the first place, but yeah, if he gets hit, he's probably done, especially if he gets hit by Silva. Best case, Volk retires after his next fight, and Silva runs the division, yeah. Objectively, where do you put John Jones as a fighter in MMA Hall of Fame? Is he really the GOAT? I don't think he's the GOAT. I think there's an argument he's third. You could drop him a little bit lower because of the the PEDs and cheating issues. So it really just depends what you value. I also think his resume is not nearly as good as people like to pretend it is. Prime Connor versus Ilya, very 50-50 in my opinion. What round does Merab finish Corey? I don't think Merab's finishing Corey. I think it'll probably just be a decision. Have you been to Atlanta? I think I have. Probably years ago now, though. It's funny how Zalal was getting his return until... Yeah, I mean, I've never liked Zalal. I've always thought his style was just very too dependent on running. But yeah, people do switch up very quickly. Do you think Merab will end his career top 5 of all time? It's possible. The biggest issue is he just doesn't have that much more time because he's getting old. Do you think you could replace Dean Thomas? I have a very low opinion of Dean Thomas, so yeah, I'm going to say yes. I think Volk's speed when he just enters and goes out of the pocket might be hard to deal with for John. But John's going to read it. Again, like, John is not Diego where he's just going to wing wild shots. Like, he's going to have the perfect strategy to deal with it. Especially if Lopez was able to consistently defend Volk's takedowns, which I think he did, except when he got rocked badly in round 1. I don't see Volk taking down John. Who's your top 5 GOAT list? I would say probably GSP, DJ, Silva, Jones, Aldo, in some order. Volk still has the same bad habits, like backhand push chin straight in the air. Yeah, exactly. So I know that Silva will punish that in one way or another. If I was going to predict Silva's game plan, I would have to look a lot more at Volk, but I think he's going to probably make it look pretty easy if that fight happens. You've seen that Dustin is joining the team where they do analyzing stuff. The analyst desk or whatever. Makes sense. I think he did it once in the past. That's fair. Do you do streams doing live commentary on fights? If not, you should. I have not so far. I do intend to start. We will see if I can start this week or not, but I am hoping to start sometime over the next few weeks. If Leon Edwards had the grit of Bilal and didn't give up every fight, do you think he could be champ again? Yes. Edwards is very technically good. He's just a quitter. Pound for pound, who wins, Merab or Khabib? Merab, in my opinion. I think JDM's anti-grappling will work well against Islam Sambo grappling style. Yeah, I agree for the most part. The thing that JDM has to be careful about is if he does get taken down, don't scramble too much. You don't want to give up the Dars. Or Volk or Vallejos. Volk. I don't think Vallejos can take down... I don't think Vallejos can take down Volk. What's wrong with Dean Thomas? I thought he was supposed to be a genius. I've just seen him say really stupid stuff way too many times. Like, he was saying, like, oh, Oliveira should have never pressured Topuria. How else are you going to beat Topuria? You can't back up against Topuria because then you're just going to get caught with an overhand when you're against the fence. Oliveira had the right idea in pressuring Topuria. He just wasn't technical enough about it. Why don't you try to get in the UFC with your knowledge? Medical stuff. I would not be capable anymore, unfortunately. Don't put Jones in your GOAT list. He's a cheater. That's a valid take. You're right, but Izzy isn't worried about Sean's power. I think he is going to be worried about Sean's power now when he got dropped by basically nothing off Sean. And the difference between John and Lopez, the Lopez is pretty huge for featherweight. John and Volk are the same size. Silva's also pretty big for featherweight. He's just not tall. But again, he cuts a lot of weight. Would Prime Mighty Mouse's skill set translate to him being a champ in today's MMA? I do not think so. I think he would be top 5. I just don't think he would be champ right now. Do you think Edwards gets bulldozed by Michael Morales because of how he reacts to pressure? Morales isn't a very pressure-heavy fighter, so Edwards has a much better chance in that fight than people are pretending. I still am going to pick Morales as the developing fighter who has more grit, but Edwards is not, like, lost there by any means. Where do you put Vallejos wrestling pound for pound in the UFC roster? I mean, I think he's at, like, probably 6 or 7, maybe a bit lower, actually, because the problem is Vallejos, like, in his pure ability to take you down is solid, but he doesn't have great control and he can't turn into any threat. All the referees make weird calls sometimes, yeah. Dean Thomas still thinks BJ Penn is the best lightweight of all time. Fair. Dean's analysis most of the time has bias. Yes, exactly. Because BJ knocked out Dean Thomas. Fair. Talking about the Jason Herzog incident. Herzog is weird. I don't like hating on Herzog because he seems like such a good guy, but his reffing is so wildly inconsistent, it's actually insane. John Silva's dense like Ilya. Yeah, exactly. John Silva or Islam. I'm taking John Silva there. Do you think Pantoja beats Prime DJ? I do think so. I think that DJ would have trouble in that matchup because he's not going to be able to hurt Pantoja. He will have an advantage in the striking, sure, but it's not going to be as big of an advantage as people think because Pantoja is going to focus very heavily on the calf kick, which can be effective against DJ's movement. And then Pantoja is just going to have such a big advantage in the wrestling. Like, DJ has gotten taken down and controlled by worse grapplers. I think Morales is going to beat up Leon. It's possible. Mobsvar versus Marab. I'm taking Marab. People are saying that Max wasn't in his prime when he fought Ilya. Thoughts? I do think that Max at 155 is a little bit better, but to say he is not in his prime is a little bit strange. Oh, are they saying like, oh, he's already out of his prime? That I would not agree with either. I don't think he's out of his prime yet. Either way, I think it's a bit of a strange take. I do agree with the thought like, oh, Max is a little better at 155 though. I think Ankalaev will beat a prime John Jones. The reason why I don't think Ankalaev beats John Jones, despite me having a higher opinion of Ankalaev's skill set, is that John Jones does very well against immobile fighters like Ankalaev. Ankalaev doesn't have much footwork. He really just plods forwards and applies a lot of pressure, and he would just run into the oblique kick over and over. Silva or DDP? I'd pick DDP to beat Anderson Silva. Could probably just take him down and beat him up. Do you think Muay Thai could be big in North America? With the correct marketing, yes. It's just been marketed so bad that it's not working. How would Tony versus Khabib have gone? I think it definitely depends when they were scheduled. If it was at one of the earlier times, Tony would have killed him. If it was the last time, Tony would have lost because he didn't seem like himself at that point. If we're talking about like the second to last time, it's probably the time it would have been the most competitive. But I think that Tony probably again would have edged it because Khabib had gassing issues. Like, all the Dagestanis do seem to have gassing issues in general. And Tony would have been able to drag him into deep waters. Any good light heavyweight will be Jones if Jones doesn't cheat. I don't agree with that. There are still good stylistic matchups for Jones. Opinion of Jones' retirement? It's a weird one because I thought he would beat Aspinall if he tried to, but it seems like he doesn't want to, or he doesn't think he would. So it's a weird one. I mean, I can't pick someone to win if they don't think they're going to win. I like hearing you and Shay's contrasting opinions. What are his opinions on, or what difference in opinions are you seeing recently? I'm just curious. I think the UFC doesn't do any pure striking organization because it would overshadow MMA. That's fair. I just think that other organizations should do a good job of pushing it. Yuri versus Ankalaev, who wins? I lean Yuri because Ankalaev does not do well with chaos, and Yuri does a very good job at creating chaos. A collab between you and Shay would be pretty good. I'm open to it. He gave me advice on YouTube stuff, so I think he seems like a good guy, so I'd definitely talk to him. It depends if he's serious, Silva, or emoting Silva. Do you think Craig Jones will coach JDM to beat Islam like he did with Volk? I mean, he's definitely going to try. I think that it will be a fight contested mainly on the feet. So I think that Craig Jones will do his job in that sense. Rob or Max at featherweight. That's a good one. I think Max, because Marab isn't going to really out-cardio Max. And Max, of course, has more of an ability to create damage. So I think Max could take it, but I think it would be like a 48-47 in either direction. Is it true Mighty Mouse would not perform as well against today's fighters? Yeah, I do not believe he would. I believe Armin is going to TKO Ilya via ground and pound. It's possible. I just don't really see it. I mean, Armin, like Oliveira likes being on his back. And Oliveira still was able to get up from Armin pretty much whenever he wanted to. And I know Oliveira has very good scrambles, but I think if Ilya is going to fight Armin, he's just going to do a full camp of, oh, let's get off the bottom. And whenever it's on the feet, Ilya has the chance to kill Armin. It's just going to take one shot. You can't go into a fight if you think you're going to lose. Yeah, exactly. Yuri would violate uncut promise. Probably. Shay thinks Khabib is not that good. I somewhat agree with him. I think that Khabib is overrated. I think that his chain wrestling style is very interesting, but I think that Khabib also had very lucky matchups. Well, I shouldn't say lucky. He had very orchestrated matchups, let's say, throughout his time in the UFC, and the lightweight division kind of sucked at the time. I do think you should market a Muay Thai organization. You really just need to take clips and just blast them on every social media possible. MMA is so much more established, it's going to stay on top no matter what. For now, Jay thinks Ankalaev will be the best light heavyweight of all time. Somehow I doubt that. It's so strange people that act like Yuri isn't very elite. Who's going to beat him besides Alex? Yeah, Yuri's only lost to one guy. Oh, he's good. I remember seeing Lucas Tracy say how Islam beat Shavkat at 170, and Shay completely disagrees with that. What do you think? How do you think that fight would play out in your eyes? That's a tough one, actually. I think Shavkat is wildly overrated, to be honest. So I could see Islam taking it, but I don't think it's like... I'm not nearly as confident as either of them. I would say it's more of like a 50-50 than, oh, I'm confident one or the other. What can Yuri do to beat Poatan? Or is it just too hard for Yuri to beat him? Yuri needs to make sure he creates chaos with the constant head movement. So it's like, okay, never go in without moving your head first because you need to evade the left hook. But from there on, yeah, create your chaos, throw the spinning elbows, do all the weird stuff. Because I feel like people forget, Yuri had a lot of success in the first fight when he was being chaotic. So he can't just go away from being chaotic. He just has to make sure that he's defensively responsible while being chaotic. I don't think Ankalaev will be the best light heavyweight. He will be good, but if Yuri beats him, they aren't going to giving him the next shot. Yeah, agreed. Why do people think John ducked Tom? Tom never really deserved the title shot as a paper champ. I mean, Tom beat everyone in front of him. John decided not to fight him despite him being the next person up, so, I mean, that's pretty textbook definition ducking. Even though I think John would win, I'm still going to say that's ducking. Yuri just has to take down Alex and submit him. That's possible as well. Which MMA pioneers would do the best in UFC today? None of them, to be honest. I mean, depends how far back we're talking about pioneers. Like, if we're talking about GSP as a pioneer, then yeah, him. But if we're talking about pioneers as like Royce Gracie era, none of them. Who you got for Ray Zolberg? I'm leaning Ray's decision. Aspinall is a paper belt. To be the champ, you have to beat the champ. To be the champ, you have to be willing to fight contenders. So I would say that Jones was more of a paper champ than Aspinall, honestly. Ankalaev is going to catch Alex with a left hook and KO him this time. That would be ironic. Doesn't matter what you think, Khabib beats any lightweight no matter what. I'm saying this as someone who doesn't even like Khabib. I heavily disagree with that. I think that the Conor fight showed that he's not as good as people think, to say the least. Islam versus Ian. Honestly, that's a tough one. Because Ian has much better game planning and fight IQ. But at the same time, because he doesn't really have the ability to hurt Islam, it might be difficult for him. So I'm going to say mild lean towards Islam, but I'm not confident. One tomorrow is going to be fire, fair. Shavkat versus Hamzat, 5 rounds. What do you think? It's the Hamzat that fought at 170. It's a tough one because Shavkat is finishable. Like, he's very hittable, and he can be, like, controlled on the ground. I'm going to say a very, very mild lean towards Hamzat getting an early finish, but I'm not confident. Do you think that people do even count people to PADs in your GOAT conversation? I technically do because everyone wants to, but I definitely understand if people take them out. Prime Leon Edwards versus Islam. Before the blueprint to Leon was laid out by Bilal. I'm still going to take Islam. People forget Yuri was about to put Alex out of there, but got greedy. Yeah, exactly. It was just... He just made a dumb mistake there. Tom versus John would have been the highest level fight. If it only lasted 2 rounds. If it got like out of 2 rounds, it would have gone very sloppy. Tom versus Francis, though, who do you got? I'm going to lean Tom because I think he can hurt Francis unlike most people. And I think if you can hurt Francis, then Francis is kind of screwed because he just takes a lot of shots on the shin. Which lightweights do you think beat Khabib? Of all time or currently? I think that when Khabib was signed to fight Cerrone, Cerrone would have beaten him. Granted, I do think prime Khabib definitely beat Cerrone, but at that time he would have lost. I think that prime Tony would have beaten Khabib. I think that I would lean towards Ilya beating Khabib, though I'm not confident. We could keep going down that, but I do think there are a fair amount that would have had a solid chance. How entertaining would Michel Pereira versus MVP be? Depends which version of Michel Pereira we get. Do you think Khabib's chain wrestling is better or Bilal's? Definitely Khabib's. Bilal's is not good. Khabib's chain wrestling is good. Like, even though I don't have the highest opinion of Khabib, like, overall as a fighter, Khabib's chain wrestling, very good. Who wins, Ilya or JDM at 170? I don't really know, honestly. Remember when we thought we were going to get Shavkat versus Hamza? Yeah, crazy times. To me, though, I don't think Tom hits super, super hard. Like, when he fought Curtis the second time, Curtis was kind of like Taliesin versus Lewis. I think Tom hurts hard enough to hurt Francis. I don't think he has, like, the craziest one-shot power of all time. I don't think he hits as hard as Francis by any means, but I think he hits hard enough to hurt Francis. How do you rate Islam's performance against Dustin? It was bad. I think it showed that Islam just... He's had, like... Both of his good performances as title defenses have been short-notice opponents. So, even though everyone wants to say, like, Islam is spectacular, I don't see it. Islam versus Dustin. When Islam called out Dustin... Confused what you were saying there. Ilya versus JDM is a crazy fight, agreed. Which is a fighter do you hate and want to see them downfall? I mean, there would have been Jones, but I don't know now. Why do you think Ilya versus JDM would be a close matchup? Because they're both so proficient boxing-wise. Top 5 karate background fighters. I don't know if I could fill up the full 5, to be honest. Like, obviously Wonder Boy is one. Honestly, you would need to throw names at me. I'm forgetting. Who do you see beating Merab? No one right now, realistically. Might be crazy, but I think Max versus Islam is 50-50. Not even 50-50. I think Max has like a 65-35 chance of winning. Hot take, Dagestanis are overrated by fans. Oh, 100%. If you look at the majority of Dagestanis, they don't do very well. It's just people cherry pick and are like, oh, this Dagestani did extremely well. So Dagestanis as a whole are good. It's specifically Dagestanis that were trained by Khabib's father had a very good track record. So it was just, okay, one gym is extremely good. That was pretty much it. Do you think Ilya saying that he would give up the belt if he had to fight Arman next is because the UFC basically said Arman needs to fight another fight? I think Ilya is at a point in his career, and to be fair, he's made it clear the entire time he's like this, where he does not really care about, like, oh, just beating every contender. Like, he wants money and he wants legacy. And Arman doesn't really serve either, especially with the fact that Arman may pull out last second. So I think that Ilya will probably opt for a Gaethje or Paddy fight. What about Max versus JDM? I think Max said he wants to move up to 170 as well. I don't think Max could beat JDM, to be honest. I think JDM is too technical a boxer. Who has the pocket? I assume you mean who has the best pocket boxing in the UFC currently? Good question. I would have to think about that more. Bryce Mitchell versus Alexandra Topuria. I'm leaning Alexandra Topuria if that happens. Aren't we getting Dan Hooker versus Arman? That would be fun. I hope it happens. Who do you think beats Ilya all-time or currently? If we're talking about at 155, the only person who I think is like really, really 50-50 is Prime Connor. Well, Armin did say he wants to give him 500k. That just like reeks of desperation. It's so bad. If you were Kevin Holland's coach, game planner, what would you have him do to try to get him to be champ? Or would you just give up and call it a lost cause? If I had to coach him, it's all about consistency with Holland. So I would make sure that he had very directed game plans to go to, rather than just trying to flow in fights. Because that's his problem. He tries to flow way too much in fights, instead of just having like specific things that he's trying to do. How do you think Alexandre Taporia does against Wellmaker at Talbot? He probably beats Wellmaker. Wellmaker just doesn't have enough experience in the sport. Talbot's a tough one. I don't know. Talbot might win that. People are discrediting Ilya Charles win, but he only lost to Armin super close split decision. Yeah, no, the Charles win for Ilya is very good look. Why did Michel Pereira look so bad? I mean, the problem with Michel Pereira is that he has half a round of cardio. And in the previous fights, what he was doing is he was just spreading it out and trying to be more technical. So he spread that half a round into like small bursts across 3 rounds. But like when you try to do that too much and try to spread it too far, then you just don't do anything. MVP, GSP, Wonderboy, Machida, Whitaker, Liddell, Giga, Sage Northcutt. I don't know if I would define half of those as karate strikers, to be honest. Like even GSP, I wouldn't like, even though I know what you're saying there, I wouldn't really define him as a karate striker. Prime Connor, max at 145. Prime Connor's just a really tough matchup for him, so I'm going to say Prime Connor. There's so many lost MMA fans on TikTok, fair. How do you think Colby Dickinese does in his UFC career? I think he's got a bright future. He could do very well. I mean, we haven't seen much. We definitely need to give him time there. You overrated Prime Connor looking at him through rose-tinted glasses? No. A lot of people think that. I think it's gotten very meta to hate on Connor because of outside of the octagon stuff, which is, again, I'm not going to say you have to like Connor as a person by any means, but in his prime, his counter-striking was absolutely ridiculous. Like, his accuracy is basically second to none. So even when you go back and watch tape of Connor and just see how he's doing things, he is an amazing striker. I think the best Dagestani is unironically are Azamat Mirzakhanov and Ikram Meliskrov. I don't agree with Ikram Meliskrov. I think Ikram's striking defense is atrocious, and he's probably not going to go far because of that. Mirzakhanov is good. The problem is that he just gets popped for juicing like once every 6 months. Who should Dulatov fight next? I think give him another can or two, to be honest, until he fights someone decent. Alexandre Taporia versus Bryce Missile. I'm going to say Alexandre Taporia by decision. You think Jan is a good comparison to Lomachenko career and fighting-wise if you look into it? I think styles are very, very different. Lomachenko is a footwork, like, he basically fights like he's dancing. It's a very interesting style. Jan, on the other hand, makes reads, but does so in a very plotty, static manner. So I think their fighting styles are very different. I feel like you need to be actively trying to achieve bad cardio if you actually train MMA seriously. I half agree. I do think a lot of the fighters are lazy when it comes to cardio. But at the same time, if you're fast twitch, developing like legit cardio is kind of crazy. Also, I really enjoy your Insta Reels and the videos you make. I think if you were able to upload vids on a weekly basis, you could really blow up. Thanks. I do want to get to the point where I'm uploading weekly YouTube videos eventually. The problem right now is because it takes me around 3 days to produce a video, it doesn't really give me that much time in the week to do other stuff. So I need to be able to get the tool for fighters out and start monetizing that. And then once that's giving me some income and I don't really have to focus on like creating it, then hopefully I can focus more on content. Dulatov or Andreas Gustafsson? That's a tough one. I'm going to say Dulatov, but if he doesn't get a first round finish, he's screwed. How well do you think Park will do against Taira? And what does his future look like in the UFC? I'm not familiar with him. I assume you didn't catch the full breakdown on that. I would just go back in the video because I gave like a very in-depth breakdown on Park against Taira. I think that he could do well in the future. I just don't think that he will be able to beat Taira. Can anyone beat Kayla Harrison? I mean, maybe, oh god, what's her name? Norma Dumont, maybe. But I'm not confident by any means. Usyk or Ali? Usyk. Do you believe Oban Elliott can crack top 10 in the welterweight division? No. I just don't think he has enough of a strength anywhere, to be honest. What fighter do you think, if they changed one or two small things mentally or getting rid of a bad habit, would you think would get dramatically better? Like unranked top 5 or top 15 to champion? Let me look at the rankings before I answer that. I want to give a correct answer. So, some candidates would be like, you know, I still think that if BSD improved, he would have a chance of going from like top 15 to top 3. I don't know if he could ever be champ at this point, but he would have a chance if he fixed a few things with his striking defense. Then, okay, no one really at welterweight or middleweight. Light heavyweight, there's no one too interesting. Yeah, I'm really going to say BSD is the best candidate there, to be honest. Would MMA be in a better state if Conor were to win against Khabib and retire? I think that MMA would be much bigger if Conor won. Whether you define that as better or not is really up to interpretation, but I do think that MMA would be much bigger, yeah. Where do you see your career and brand in 5 years? I want to make the tools for fighters a very ubiquitous thing where pretty much every fighter is using that system. Andreas Gustafsson's going to melt or not, very possible. Taira versus Van would go so hard, yeah, agreed. Harrison is so big, yep. I want to see that for the Bellator #1 contender fight if Van loses after his title shot valid. What do you think about that Korean Tyson guy that just beat Oban Elliott? That was just shocking. Not even because he won. Like him winning as massive underdog was surprising in itself, but it's because of how he won. Most people thought, including myself, that if he was going to pull off a crazy upset, it would be like just chinning him. Out-grappling him for 15 minutes while being a striker was the very surprising part. So, I think he has potential, but we definitely need to see more. Leon, he has to stop with the quitter mentality. Yeah, I mean, if Leon could do that, then fair. Josh versus Manel would be fire. Fair. Manel has to actually show up, though. I don't know what he's doing. Protez if he stops smoking and chase. Fair. Top versus Van. Yeah, it'd be fun. I do think Van would take it, but it'd be fun. Bryce should change his mentality. Bryce... I feel like Bryce's striking regressed a lot. I was noticing in his most recent fight, I had no idea what the hell he was doing on the feet. He looked so spazzy, it was weird. I'll take Usyk could be a top 10 heavyweight because he does combat sambo and kickboxing. It's very possible. I think he could even be a top 5 heavyweight, to be honest. Just drill half a year of takedown defense. BSD is being sacrificed to Rufy. Yes and no. I do think that Rufy probably wins, but if it gets out of the first round without BSD taking damage, it gets very interesting. Khalil versus Ankalaev. Could Khalil give Ankalaev problems? I don't think so. I think if you're fighting like a technical fight, Ankalaev's just going to be better than Khalil pretty much everywhere. Usyk would be top 2 right now. Yeah, that's very possible. Like I wouldn't even be surprised if Usyk was champ somehow. BSD will be improved under his new coach. It's possible. Let's see what happens. What boxer today could be top 15 in MMA if they switch careers to full-time MMA. If Lomachenko is a bit younger, he definitely could. If Crawford was younger, he definitely could. Even now, they could probably do okay, but like, if they did it in their primes, they could go very far. Alright, I'm probably going to wrap things up here. Thank you guys for coming today. This was a fun stream, and I hope the new graphic style was interesting. I want to go in that direction of being able to explain stuff in like a more dynamic manner. So, just one more promo before I go. If you guys are betting and are not using the algorithms yet, even though last week had like 8 upsets or something ridiculous, we were up 25 units in the Discord. So, link in the description, sign up if you have not already. Otherwise, hope you guys just have a good night and enjoy the event on Saturday. Bye, guys.